There's a fight that is taking place between David Sirota and Jimmy Dore. As it stands, David Sirota is still basically sending subtweets aimed at Dore. David Sirota is pissed. And I got to be honest, after seeing it, he has a right to be pissed. I heard about the fight between these two, meaning on the chat or the back and forth. I didn't get the opportunity to see it. And now that I get the opportunity to see it, I got to be honest, Jimmy Dore's behavior is appalling. You can downvote me all that you want, but everything I'm saying here is flat fact correct. I'm going to show you part of the video. You guys have heard me make a full-throated argument for this idea of pushing Nancy Pelosi from the standpoint of leverage. You've heard me make the argument that that should have been done even going back to Joe Biden, and that going for Nancy Pelosi. I've made full-throated arguments, pushing back on AOC arguments about, oh, it could hurt us in regards to things like $15 minimum wage, or Nancy Pelosi will punish us. I've shown the lunacy of that particular point of view in regards to the comparisons to the potential for showing a command of leverage, something that the left doesn't necessarily typically use, on top of showing and issuing leverage, something that in and of itself will be a win. Also, getting Democrats on the record. And if you full well believe in Medicare for all, people like the squad, people like these lefties who want to run and try to get into Congress, you can use the fact that your crowd wants Medicare for all and these dinosaurs was against it, meaning it's something that you can also run on. Not to mention, you're in the midst of a pandemic with 300,000 people dead, 14 million people infected, maybe 20, 30 million people without health care. Yes! It should be done. It's one of those things that screams and cries out to be done. Inaction has not necessarily worked all that well. And you have this situation where all of these lefties kowtowed back to Joe Biden immediately at the end of the primary, unconditionally, which basically created an incentive for Joe Biden to screw you over going forward. In fact, you had all of these lefties that backed Joe Biden even when it was clear that Joe Biden was chasing Republicans. You tell me, what is the rational response from the standpoint of a neoliberal or from the standpoint of a third-way Democrat when you can basically tell them, I am not going to vote for Medicare for all in the pandemic. I am not going to support the Green New Deal. I am not going to defund the police. In addition to another host of issues that the majority of the American public craves, wants, and even needs at this point, ethically, morally right. Basically, do your job. All sorts of policies that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party is not for, and they were able to basically get your vote unconditionally. What is the incentive for them after that? The incentive for Joe Biden is to do exactly what Joe Biden did and put one dinosaur in that spot after the next. That basically is a repudiation of the left, with corporate America and the media loving the multi-color of it all, because in their heads, that doesn't affect my economics one bit. Here, take Kamala Harris, first black thing moving, as opposed to, like Medicare for all. I'll tell you this, you can keep Kamala Harris and give me and the tens and 20 millions of people healthcare. My point is that inaction over the last 40, 50 years has not done us well. And it takes a change of temperament. It takes a certain issue of being able to set a demand and being willing to ride that demand out in order to force and compel leverage. Not only do I think it's good for the mechanics of it, I also think it's good from the standpoint of political legitimacy, something that the left lacks. So I like the idea. I full-throatedly push for the idea. My problem with this isn't the idea itself. My problem with this is the way this is being argued. The belittling, the attacks, the smears, the inability of Dore in this clip to listen to Nuance, the inability to even be honest about Nuance. It's somewhat disingenuous. You can downvote me all you want, but the reality of it is I'm going to show you the clip. And you can see it for yourself, and you can come away with your own assessments. The fact of the matter is David Sirota has been doing this stuff for like 20 years. David Sirota has been getting hit in the face for decades. And in being hit in the face before Dore even started this stuff, pushing for these policies, getting hit for these policies, the attacks, the slings and arrows, the nasty things that they were saying at him in this election cycle, when he was one of those guys who was trying to push Sanders to actually be more aggressive, when he was trying to get him to throw punches and whatnot. He was the guy that was trying to get Sanders to do what Dore wanted. And then, because you don't agree with him explicitly and exactly in the specific way, shits on the guy? That's a fail. Honestly, that's a total fail. I've had an experience like this with Dore, and I'll explain it after the break. And I got to be honest, this reminded me of that experience, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. David Sirota has been one of the good ones. And you could have an argument with someone that you agree with, but have nuance and context in the way that you talk about it, in the way that you frame it, because you want to have an honest take in regards to what you're willing to lose and what you're willing to risk in lieu of what you're trying to gain. That's just honest. It's honest framing of an argument. And yelling and screaming when you can't come up with an intellectual answer, when you can't come up with a way of pushing back on what the individual is saying. So instead you get belligerent in lieu of a decent argument. That is a fucking fail. And the accusation that David Sirota is somehow looking for a paycheck, looking for $1, and all of this other stuff belies the fact that Dore is paid explicitly to do what he's doing. Meaning the argument that you're going to throw out at this guy that he's somehow some kind of hack also can be leveled at you, and often does get leveled at you as a grifter who does shit like this. I'm sorry, I didn't like this video. I thought this was abysmal. And the smug that comes off not understanding why he's upset, not understanding why he's pissed, not even giving a shit why he's pissed, despite the guy has been one of your supporters all this time. I don't know. I find this to be dramatically problematic. I don't know if this is an ego going maniac. I don't know if this is because you have a huge amount of people just basically saying you're right, even when there's no reality to the fact that you actually are right. You could be entirely wrong and have a crowd of people telling you you're right. I don't know where this comes from. But wherever this comes from, it is perfectly possible to have an argument with somebody. That person basically agrees with most of what you're saying, disagrees with some of it, and you leave without shitting on the person or putting a knife in him. Yes, I had qualms with this. Clearly, I have no issue with Dore. I like the guy. I think the guy is beneficial. And there is an argument to be made that that level of anger and that level of radical is a necessity in political space. It's always been a necessity in political space. If you ever want to pull the political parties in a particular direction, you need those people out there who are going to be uncompromising, who are going to say, look, you want me to give you the benefit of the doubt. And me giving you the benefit of the doubt has allowed this kind of soothing incrementalism that basically gets nothing done. We're done with that. This is the demand. You accept it or you don't. And there will be consequences if you don't. That's politics. That's leverage. That's something that hasn't been taking place for a very, very long time. And it takes stuff like that to even get the party's attention. He's a necessary factor. Every bit as much as this kind of Malcolm X versus Martin Luther King. Both were necessary in order to get change accomplished. Both were necessary in order to change the hegemonic shift. And you can make an argument that the fact that one exists makes the other guy that much more valuable. I make it to the point that Dore is necessary. The people who basically attack him as a grifter or as just a yeller or just part nonsense. That element is necessary to get anything accomplished. So that's not where I'm coming from at all. I'm coming from this thing of you don't eat people who are your friend. I'm going to show you the clips. I'm going to show you the video. And I'm going to give you my own experience with this, which is kind of why this potentially hits home. Not to mention, it's just painful to watch. Welcome to probably heavy downvote, but everything in it is true. Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you the opportunity to do it. Downvote all you like, comment all you like. Everything I'm saying in this video is true, is my point of view. And to be honest, it kind of bolsters the point that I'm trying to make. Even the person who put this video up put what was basically an opposite portrayal of what was taking place in the video. It's utterly astonishing. I'll tell you my own experience about this. That was less dramatic, but less of a scar in this. In fact, didn't leave a scar at all. It was more so just feeling a particular way. But very similar to this in many ways. Andrew Yang makes an argument about the $15 minimum wage. And Andrew Yang says something that is flat, fact, undeniably, exponentially true. That if workers are paid $15 an hour and you could find a robot that would flip a burger for $14.95, the company will put that burger flipping robot in order to save that nickel. Because at the end of the day, they're capitalists and their job is to maximize their profit. Is that a reason to push or not push for $15 an hour minimum wage? No, it is not. You still should push for $15 an hour minimum wage, if not more. Should you be aware of that phenomena, however? Yes. Should you pretend that that phenomena doesn't exist? No. Has that phenomena existed and presents itself now? Yes. When Uber, Lyft, all of those drivers lose their jobs, they're going to lose their jobs because there's going to be a machine that can drive from point A to point B without those drivers being in the car. And fact of the matter is some of those machines are driving right now in places like San Francisco. There's another one that just came out the other day where they were building the body of it and so forth. Those things are coming, and all of those people are going to lose their jobs. Checkout counters. What do you see now? You have many of the checkout counters that have basically been covered by machines with fewer and fewer manned by human beings. So one person basically helps 5 people in the checkout counter as opposed to having 5 checkout aisles. Why are they doing that? Because again, if you can replace a worker, that computer doesn't get blue, that computer doesn't get sick, upset, none of that stuff. It goes, stays there, does a job. Human not required. This is going to happen throughout your society. Things like teaching and so forth. Yes, those things may be there. But from the standpoint of many of the jobs that can be basically either software or hardware to do it, if they can do it for cheaper than a worker, every incentive in the world, especially under the mindset of maximizing cash, they'll do it. Now, that's flat fact true. That is coming, and that is going to be the wave of technology. The moment that a capitalist gets the opportunity, when it's cheaper than labor, they'll do it. It's the same reason that they move the companies across shores. If I can not pay this worker $15 an hour, and instead I can move my company to China, pay that guy $4 an hour, and then ship the products back in, why wouldn't they do that? And why wouldn't the same rule apply if it would happen across seas regarding technology? And it does. I made that point. Dore disagreed with that point because he disagreed with Yang. And I was making the point that Dore was wrong. Yang was right. He asked me if I want to come on. I said yes. And he's like, dude, I'm not going to take it easy on you. I was like, dude, are you sure you want me to come on? You're wrong on this. This is flat fact true. I'm telling you, you're wrong. I get on the show and they say, hey, look, whatever happens, let's just keep it to the show, right? Okay, no big deal. Fine. And then Dore comes on and he tells me, he says, if I lose the argument, I'm never going to show this video. I think he's fucking around, right? I think he's fucking around. I don't believe, I was like, okay, he's not going to do that. He's not being serious. He never showed that video. The video was scuttled. The argument was never showed. Yes, for my opinion, he lost the argument because, like I said, what I said is flat fact true. Every economist in the world knows it. Everybody knows it. It's even implicit in this notion of maximizing profit. Video was never aired. It wasn't a mean-spirited. The yelling, yes. and the attempted rhetoric. But again, nuance, missing, acknowledging what's being said is this kind of the reality of events, missing, in lieu of rhetoric. So when I watched this, I thought, oh, that sucks. That is not good, especially for somebody like Sirota, who is not on the wrong side. Look, you guys can try to cancel him. You could try to frame him. But all of that is basically taking place because of the way this interview came out. And I think that framing for Sirota is atrocious. Let's look at the clip. Just 2 clips. First point. Sirota goes on to the show. These two go back and forth. Sirota leaves the show. Sirota, from his point of view, gets woefully misrepresented. So much so he is apoplectic. And he wants to come back on the show to get his point. They basically avoid bringing him back on for a while. Meaning it's like they ice him out. Eventually, he's let back on the show. And you can imagine if you have a conversation with somebody, you leave, and then that person shits on you and smears you, you're going to feel some kind of way. Especially if you think they're not even going to let me back on to kind of get some of this nonsense off of me that the person shit on me with, because I didn't agree with them in the exact specific way to which they wanted me to agree with them. Look, in and of itself, that's a problem. Sirota comes back on the show. They finally let him back on. Listen to the back and forth that these guys have. Just listen.
Did you not? So you didn't say you weren't willing to risk Kevin McCarthy becoming speaker, because that's what we heard.
Simply saying, Jimmy, I'm simply saying, understand the potential scenarios here. And they're not all that easy questions, right? Nancy Pelosi being Speaker of the House, not a great thing. Kevin McCarthy being Speaker of the House, not a great thing. These are not great choices. I actually told you repeatedly that I agree with you. It would be extremely useful to have a Medicare for all floor vote. And that I think it's good that you brought up that Democrats should actually do a thing. I've literally been working in this fucking business to try to get the Democrats to do a fucking thing for a quarter century of my life. That's how old I am. Okay, so the idea that I'm not a person who doesn't want, I'm a person who's just trying to get an establishment. I'm trying to get a job with Nancy Pelosi. I'm trying to get a job with the Democratic establishment.
Well,
that is a complete fucking joke.
Well, welcome to the pressure campaign that seems to be working after 25 years of your work.
Now, think about what was just said. To try to make it look like I'm trying to get a job for Nancy Pelosi. A, that's a cheap shot. A, it's a dick move to even postulate that. C, it's even undermining it from the standpoint of professional integrity, acting as if the guy who's been in this for 20 years or more doesn't have it, or is trying to get a job from the very people that hate his guts. It's disingenuous on its face. That's kind of my point. And if you are being hit with something like that, you will definitely feel some kind of way, especially if you had 5,000, 7,000 people basically hearing this kind of misrepresentation of your position. Let's let him finish.
Welcome. It's here. It's here. It's happening.
It takes a long time, man. I mean, that's the thing. Don't scoff at it. It takes a long time.
I'm not scoffing at it, David. What I'm saying is what we heard you say is that you were pleading with us not to push this because Kevin McCarthy's. That's what we heard. I'm telling you, that's what we heard.
I wasn't. Jimmy, I was just being, here's the thing. We can actually agree that the Democrats need to be held accountable and also be honest about the situation. I'm just being honest about the situation. You don't have to pretend that situation doesn't exist. We can be honest about it and then also say that they need to be pressured.
The situation that he's talking about is if Pelosi gets pressured, and if nobody else runs against her, is it possible that a Republican takes the spot? Yes. Yes. So let's keep going. Let's just being honest, right? Keep going.
Here's the thing. I'm a person who doesn't just tell my audience what they want to hear. I'm a person who is actually an honest person. I tell the truth, and I've been punished for that over the course of my life. And it is just an honest fact that it wouldn't be a good thing for Kevin McCarthy to be the Speaker of the House. And it's not a good thing that Nancy Pelosi would be Speaker of the House. There should be another candidate against her. I don't know how to be any more clear than that, but that is the truth.
That is a bad negotiation.
Now, he's not saying don't pressure her.
Ask you.
He's not saying don't go after Democrats. He's not saying, hey, that's not a good idea. You should push for that and more, because that was the other part. Because I think this stick-to-itiveness, or this idea that the only thing that should be done here is this very specific thing, I think that's nonsense. I think this is a negotiating position like anything else. They should get out what they can get out. Medicare for All is one of those things that should definitely be on the list. And yes, they should be pressuring her. And yeah, there should be another member of the squad to run. He's agreed with all that. I'm just pointing that out. He's agreed with all of that.
Do you think it would be a good thing for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker of the House? Just forget about the negotiating part. Forget about the tactic. Just answer that question. Is it a good or bad thing for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker of the House? Don't deflect. Just answer that goddamn question.
I think it would be, would it be better or worse? Who knows?
Question. Would it be a bad thing for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker of the House? Answer it.
If Nancy Pelosi is unwilling to put Medicare for all on the floor, what's the difference?
He's not going to answer that. He's not going to answer. He entirely dodges that question. Meaning, you could say, yes, I think it's better because Nancy Pelosi and Democrats need to be taught a lesson and they're not going to do the job. You could say, no, I don't think it's better, and then make a point. You can even say, I don't think there's a difference between those things. I think those things are absolutely the same. And fact of the matter is, David, if Nancy Pelosi is not willing to push for Medicare for all, why should I, and why should any of us back her? Maybe she should lose under that precedent. Meaning you could be the radical and you can still be honest in that position. And I got to be honest, this feels disingenuous to me.
Answer the question.
What's the difference if Nancy Pelosi is
I'm willing to answer the question and be honest and say
the question is again, the question is a shit sandwich better than a shit sandwich? Is that what you're saying? Is a shit sandwich better than a shit sandwich?
That's a deflection. That's a deflection. He said, what's the difference? So are you saying no? Meaning, I'm trying to get to the point of saying what's the difference? It's not the same thing as, no, I don't see a difference between those things. It's not saying yes. It's not saying no. It's a deflection. It's not saying anything. And it's the reason it's not saying anything, because he doesn't want to answer that question. Let's keep going. I mean, because this gets worse.
This is not the argument. This is not the argument, David. You are framing as a human being, you're framing the argument incorrectly. As a human being, you're framing the argument as a human.
So now he just yells. He just yells. There's no intellectual retort to this. There's no nuanced thing of where you can recognize, yeah, fair enough. What's his name could possibly be it. I don't necessarily like that idea, but I don't necessarily like the idea of Nancy Pelosi getting it either. And inaction has caused us. God, man, there's so many answers to this, or back and forths. This is an extraordinarily good conversation for two people to be having. It is not a good conversation when it looks like this. And this is not Sirota's fault. Be very clear. 1,000 downvotes today? Fuck it. Let's go all in. Because what I'm saying is true. This conversation devolved. It didn't have to devolve to this way. These guys are not that far remote and apart from one another. And it only took a bit of modicum, I gotta be honest, of not being a dick to the guy just because he doesn't necessarily agree with each and every part of your premise. I mean, let's be very clear. Sirota is literally an ally. And he's basically eating him alive. Not in the winning the argument part, just being belligerent. Let's keep going.
Human being who needs Medicare for all. People who have just lost their health care. As a human being, you're framing this incorrectly.
People coming up with ideas and understanding systems that are part of the political space is part of politics. And those things, being part of politics, cannot be ignored. And you can't ignore those things in lieu of just kind of yelling and asserting ideology. These guys are in the same sandbox. Sirota is probably one of Dore's biggest fans, or at the very least up until this point. And this argument, this conversation, one that honestly really did need to be had, especially going from the standpoint of lefties. Like I said before, I don't know how much it was going on for a while, but lefties needed to have this conversation back during Biden. Meaning in the election, when Biden was running against Trump, this conversation should have been had. And I say the conversation should have been had because of all the things that were necessary and all the things that were going on. And it was very clear that immediately after the election, leverage, up in smoke. That conversation wasn't had during the election. Lefties bent over, spray-wide. And you have this situation where Biden basically fucked you royally once he got out and realized you guys don't have any leverage on me. And even when you did have leverage on me, you weren't willing to use it. In this very specific case, that's why my point is, yes, action is better. Pressure is better. You harass, you push, you make them know that you're watching, you make them know that you're accountable. And the wild part about this is, under normal circumstances, Democrats just blow you off. AOC is literally on Twitter talking about ideas and trying to make this work. Whether she does it or not is a secondary thing. I guess I'm trying to make the point that poor behavior, this is poor behavior. That's all. I guess that's my point. This is poor behavior. And these two, good points. You should accept the guy's nuance. You should accept the fact that the guy backs the idea, likes the idea, even if he doesn't necessarily believe in each and every part of the idea. And having an argument with somebody where you could talk to them like a sane adult, as opposed to getting into this childish screaming shit when you don't necessarily have an argument to make. Yeah, I hated this video. This video turned me off royally. And I'm saying this to somebody who's actually a fan of both of these guys. Let's let him finish.
As a human being, you're framing it incorrectly. Just so you know, the story is that you're not willing to risk. And I'm asking you, are you willing to risk Nancy Pelosi's speakership to get this done?
You're asking him that after not answering his question. Screaming at him for a minute or so, not answering his question. You can't tell me that this is good behavior.
Are you?
Yeah. 100%, because another candidate can run.
Because that's what.
Democratic
thank you for clarifying that.
Another Democratic candidate campaigning on Medicare for all can run.
Yeah, this is painful. This is painful. Like I said, guys, you can disagree with me on this. That's horrendous behavior. That's all I'm saying. That is horrendous behavior. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thanks, guys.